Margie, and this is my sister Audrey.
Or,
We
as you can call us, Dr. Johnson and Dr. Ayers, because we doctors. Doctor, like sister, sister, but we doctor.
sort of, yes. And we promise to eventually stop saying that.
Nope.
Not the doctor part, but the stopping on
Oh,
it and
yes.
celebrating it. But boy, it feels good.
Maybe.
It
I
feels
mean,
good.
you know the song Sisters,
Yeah.
Sisters. We could sing Doctors,
Yeah. Okay.
Doctors,
We
but we
could.
won't.
We
Okay.
could.
We'll just put a
Um,
pin in that and move on.
We are so glad to be with you today. We are the co-founders of Harmony Group Consulting, and we focus on helping people live harmonious lives. And harmony, as you know, means that we are in some sort of sync with ourselves, with one another, with our jobs, with our circumstances. And so that is our hope and goal, is that our time spent with you on this podcast, our time spent with each other, it's just to help us do that better. We want to live lives that are fulfilling. And so this,
Absolutely. And I
yes,
was
go.
so sorry it jumped right on over you,
I'm
but I
in.
had this great idea as you were talking, and I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about it before you said it, which is great. So sorry about that.
Oh,
But here's the other thing that's really cool. When you think of music, there's nothing better than this really dissonant chord that bites against itself and then resolves.
yes.
See? And what we're doing is bringing people to the resolution, because you
Yeah.
have to have that conflict, that dissonance,
Yes.
so that you can resolve.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Well, and you know that idea. You can't have sweet without the sour. You can't have dark without the light. You
Yes.
can't have good times
Yes.
without the bad times. You can't really have
Yes.
resolution without conflict. And so last podcast, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. It was sort of our New Year resolutions not to make, but resolutions to make, kind of a revision, so to speak.
Mhm.
Instead of avoiding conflict, we step into it with some purpose and with some intention, and knowing that it's helpful and good for our relationships when done well, right?
Yes. Here's another idea. You can't make a really good chocolate chip cookie without adding a little bit of salt.
Yes, you are right.
Because those cookies, if you leave that salt out, ugh,
Yeah, not
gotta
as
have some
good.
saltiness, got a
Okay.
little bit of spice.
Well, and have you ever heard someone say, he is such a yes man? All he does is say
Mm.
yes. And we say that
A
with a
little
little bit
something
of,
on their nose.
okay, we say that with a little bit of disdain, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm not sure we want our worlds filled with yes men. Yes, you do. You do. In your heart of hearts, you want people to just agree with you.
Sure.
But also then our objective higher selves, we know we
Mm.
need refinement and we know we need input.
Yes.
But it is yeah, we don't need or want, nor do we want to be yes men. We want to have
No.
our own thoughts and bring our own stuff to the table, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to, nobody wants a boss who doesn't want to grow.
Right.
Nobody wants a boss or a leader who only wants yes people,
Yes. Mhm.
because it's
Yeah.
an icky environment.
Right.
And, there's a lot of people using the term toxic to mean lots of different things right now. And so I'm not sure that I want to throw that word in there, just because if I'm going to use that word, I feel like I've got to have a good definition of it so we
Yeah.
all are on the same space. And so I don't know that I want to go all the way to saying that it's a toxic workspace, but I do think everybody can agree, if you have a leader, whether it's in a workspace or a home or a volunteer space, if you have a leader that's willing and receptive to some feedback that may be challenges, or that good iron sharpens iron kind of conflict where you're challenging a decision in an effort to improve an idea or improve a product, those are the type of working or living environments that are more enjoyable, and they feel invigorative and even more welcoming. At least I think so. What do you think?
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think when there is this healthy um healthy discord because of everyone bringing really rich ideas to the table in a right and good way, that is so invigorating. We were talking about this earlier. I've been reading this book called Leading the Unleadable.
Mm,
Not because I have any people that are unleadable, just in general, how do you become a better leader? Well, what really caught me on this book was the tagline, because it talked about leading mavericks, cynics, divas. And it now, while it's oversimplifying, the
yes.
idea being that sometimes people don't always come to the table with the purest, harmonious intentions.
Mhm,
Sometimes they come with their own agenda, right? The mavericks.
mhm,
Sometimes they come in this sort of, this will never work. This company doesn't even know what they're, this sort of cynic approach. And sometimes
mhm,
it's, very diva-like. And so it's a good check and balance for us as leaders to think about who it is that is coming to that table to create that environment.
mhm,
One of the things I think that is interesting in this book, the author, Willett, I believe is his last name, he was talking
mhm,
about how important it was to appreciate the diversity between
mm,
around the table. And in a world where that is a very critical part of each of our
mhm,
organizations, that diversity around the table is important to appreciate, but it's not always easy. And so it
mhm,
requires really intentional appreciation on our parts to say, okay, this person's coming from this angle. I should listen in and understand that angle so that that helps us create a more, a better product to reach more people, more universal product or
mhm,
experience. So I really like that idea, that along with assuming the best about people that we're with, that they likely don't mean to cause dissension. They're bringing their perspective to the
mhm.
discussion.
I think you bring up some really good points. If we look at leading the home or leading within the home, um, if we are talking about having lots of children, especially if they're in their formative years, then sometimes it's really hard to share the leadership role and to take their ideas into consideration because they're children and we're the parent and they're 8. Of course, they're going to want to have ice cream for dinner again. But we as parents know they really need to have a well balanced meal. I'm just throwing this out as an idea. But to be able to, I think what a leader in that position, a leader in the home could do to take the ideas from the book you're speaking about would be to say, so maybe I need to ask more questions about the kids if they're old enough to really be able to explain. I know we can't get a conversation, a deeply academic conversation out of a 4 year old, but sometimes we can have a good enough conversation. And so maybe what we find out is they're just not really hungry. They're not starving. Maybe what we find out is um, they maybe they've got sensory issues and they don't want anything slimy. I know you've had a kid who just did not like the texture of yogurt,
Yeah.
or their teeth, maybe their molars are coming in, so they don't want anything super chewy or crunchy. But taking into consideration that kind of diversity, it's not the DEI that most corporations are talking about, but it would be an application of it on a much smaller scale for the home. Now,
Yeah.
in a workplace, diverse, we can apply that in so many different ways from people's backgrounds of where they worked before they joined us, maybe what they're studying, maybe what they are really good at. We start putting into their ideas into play, or take at least take it into consideration. I think that book is probably applicable on so many different levels.
Yeah, one of their other points that you made me think of, he said succinctly, treat trouble as information-rich data.
Mm,
And so as
yeah.
you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, that's the way we have to look at it as leaders through conflict, that there's something going on here. This is data I
Yes.
need. because if it's happening
Yes.
with one person, it's going to happen with a whole sector of my
Right.
people, of my product, the group that's going to be looking at my product or experiencing my business's agenda. But I think it's helpful to think about it as information gathering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, there's something about that too that separates uh, your personal feelings about someone from the
Mm-hmm.
business and work you're trying to do. It
Yeah.
it isolates that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us from keeping a record of wrongs. It helps us really do this assuming the best. We just may objectify what's happening in that moment, just as that moment. This is data. This
Mm-hmm.
person's giving me kickback about something. Why? What was your
Mm-hmm.
experience like? Help me understand what led up to that so that I can prevent that from happening in other places. But also, is that telling me something about my experience?
Yeah.
I think about it in the K-12 classroom. You might have a teacher who has no problems with parents or students, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden there are disgruntled parents or students
Mm.
coming in a lot in the afternoon or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's something going on, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Mm-hmm.
change and there's some trouble that can give us some
Mm-hmm.
data. It doesn't mean that that teacher is not a great teacher. It doesn't mean that those
Right.
students are not good at biology. It just means that there's some data that we can gather. But I I find from a school principal's perspective, that sometimes to talk about that trouble, even in a data scenario, causes emotion on the part
Mm.
of the teacher, the parent, the student,
Mm-hmm.
whoever. So how do we help other people see that we really are just trying to be objective here? We're really just laying out the data, but we still value you. This is good feedback, but it doesn't mean that we don't like your initiative or whatever it is. Does that make sense? How do we get at being intentional about creating that safe place?
Well, it's interesting that you used the word intentional there because that was a word I was going to use. I think it comes from them being able to trust our intentions.
Mm,
So, Ben and Jerry's ice cream, years ago, one of my friends used to use this in her workshop presentations. And she said, Ben and Jerry's have stayed in, or still in business together. And one of them, Ben, was asked, "How have you stayed in business together for so long?" And he said, "Because I've never doubted Jerry's intentions."
mm,
So if you think about, um, are you are we as leaders in whichever capacity, are we presenting ourselves in a consistent basis? Meaning, if we say, listen, we really do just want this information, if we get that information, but then we hold it against them in the
yeah,
future,
yeah,
that is going to negate our being accepted as a person with good intentions. If we listen one time with, if we say we want to hear this time, what you're thinking, and then the next time we say, "I didn't ask your opinion."
right,
That's being inconsistent.
right.
And so what as a leader, we also know that we just have off days. We have bad days. We have, if anybody's suffering from any kind of chronic pain or the invisible kind of ailments like fibromyalgia, or things where nobody can tell that you might be having an off day, but you are, that could look like an inconsistencies.
Mm,
And then I think as a leader, we have to have an a level of transparency and more, to use your word again, intentional communication that says, "I am having an off day and I do really want to know your inputs, everybody, but today, because of the time that I have to make this decision, I can't take your input today, but I do want to hear it in the future." um I think I was listening to Radical Candor,
mhm,
the book you told me about, Radical Candor. And I think it was in that book that the author talked about how there's different levels of something, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like level one, I want your input. Tell me, what do you think about this? Because I'm gathering information. Level two, I've already made the decision. Oh, I know. It's the difference between having a proposal meeting and
Mm,
having a decision making
okay.
meeting. So in the proposal meeting, you're holding it with, and everybody knows this is input time. I want to hear everything. Tell me what your thoughts are. But if you have a decision meeting, it's not the time. I've made the decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so being clear, I think can really help. And then, like I said earlier, being consistent so that they trust your intentions. I think that could play into it too.
Yeah, I think that's so, so good. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the humanity of this process. It is not a formula. If you think, if we think, if I think, if I do X, Y, Z, I'm going to get A, B, C. And these are humans with good days, bad days, invisible pains, home lives, their own personal struggles. It's not a formula. It's really an art as opposed to a science, isn't it? Where we're constantly having to read the room and gather that, awareness of what's happening around us, and
Mhm.
um, which is a lot of work on the leader. So let's acknowledge that it's
Yeah.
it's it's exhausting to have to be the one that's orchestrating the proposal process and making sure that while you are responsible for the logistics, you're also responsible then for the social dynamic of that process so that everybody also feels included. It's a tricky tightrope to walk, and encouraging though that it's okay. We used to say when our kids were little, and we would do some kind of goofy something as parents, which was very seldom, but we would say, just put money in that therapy jar. And the other one of us would say, it's kids are so resilient. It's going to be fine. Like and they, and they are, our kids
Mhm.
despite all the mistakes along the way, our kids have turned out beautifully, right?
Mhm.
And so I think about that too. Your teams are resilient. Yes, we're going to mess up, and there are going to be times when we're leading or we're in conflict where we're not going to pause and think well about what we're saying, but teams are resilient. Their people are forgiving. We can go back and say, hey, I didn't handle that the way I'd hoped. Just like you said, I think it was on the last podcast that,
Mhm.
I started thinking about that. It was not really what I intended. And people will come along. So I'm grateful that there's some wiggle room as we're learning how to appreciate everybody's perspective and live in that healthy conflict state.
Yep, absolutely. I'm with you. Well, I hope that all of you watching, or the one or two of you that are watching, hey, good to see you. Um, I hope you're able to come away feeling encouraged that you're not alone as you are also trying to figure out how to lead within your own realm, whatever it is. I hope you see that we are figuring things out. And I hope you continue to come alongside us and we'll figure it out together. Thanks for being here.
Yep. If you haven't already, subscribe, follow us here on YouTube, or on our podcast platforms, and join us as we continue on this journey this year. Again, happy 2024.
Whoop,
And
whoop.
we hope that you have a very harmonious new year. I know. See
Love
what
it.
I'm saying? All right.
Love it.
Take care, everybody. See ya.
Bye.